Hello everyone. In this class, we'll study about the lymphatic system. The learning objectives are name the components of lymphatic system of the body and give functions of lymphoid tissues, give course of circulation of lymph in the body, name the types of lymphatic ducts and explain their function, differentiate lymphatic capillaries from vascular capillaries, give the composition and function of lymph. Lymphatic system consists of lymphatic vessels and lymphatic tissues. When circulating blood reaches the capillaries, part of its fluid content passes into surrounding tissues as tissue fluid. Most of this fluid re-enters capillaries at their venous ends. Some of it is, however, returns to the circulation through separate system of lymphatic vessel, which is called as lymphatics. The fluid passing through the lymphatic vessel is called as lymph. The smallest lymphatic vessels are lymphatic capillaries that join together to form larger lymphatic vessels. The largest lymphatic vessel in the body is thoracic duct, which drains lymph from the greater part of the body. The thoracic duct ends by joining left subclavian vein at its junction with internal jugular vein. On the right side, it is the right lymphatic duct that has a similar termination. Lymphoid tissue may be broadly classified as a diffuse lymphoid tissue and dense lymphoid tissue. So this is the diagram of how the lymph vessels ultimately they're going to drain into the at the left subclavian and left internal jugular veins. Lymph is a transduct from blood and contains the same proteins but the smaller amounts and in different proportions. Suspended in lymph, there are cells that are chiefly lymphocytes. Most of these lymphocytes are added to the lymph as it passes through the lymph nodes, but some are derived from the tissues drained by the nodes. Large molecules of fats, chylomicrons, are absorbed from the intestine. They enter into the lymph vessels. After fatty meal of these globules, they may be so numerous that lymph becomes milky, so which is called chyle. Under these conditions, lymph vessels can be seen early as they pass through the mesentery. The lymphatics drain lymph from different tissues of the body and empty the same into the subclavian veins at the junctions with the internal jugular veins. The lymphatic vessels typically begin as a blind tubular bulbs, that is called as lymphatic bulbs, that drain into the meshwork of interconnected lymph vessels. For example, in the intestine, villus lacteals are the lymphatic bulbs. Tissue fluid enters into the bulb that in turn drain into the interconnected lymph vessels and then from these vessels into tubular lymphatic vessels and the larger lymphatic vessels. Lymphatic vessels coalesce into increasingly larger vessels. Larger vessels are surrounded by the contractile cells similar to that of smooth muscles of the blood vessels. Lymph nodes are interposed in the path of lymphatics. So this is the diagram of the lymph bulb where it is showing the interstitial fluid, tissue cell, the lymphatic bulb, the lymphatic capillaries and the lymphatic wall, so which is going to ultimately drain into the lymphatic ducts. Initial lymphatics are called as lymphatic bulbs and interconnected vessels. Specialities of these lymphatic vessels are they differ from vascular capillaries in several ways. There is no basal lamina under the endothelium. Junctions between the endothelial cells are open. No fenestration in the endothelium, and they have a tight. The tight junctions are absent here in the initial lymphatics. The initial lymphatics lack walls and smooth muscles in their walls. The tissue fluid enters into them through gaps or loose junctions between the endothelial cells present in their linings. Movement of fluid in them is facilitated by the contraction of the organs in which they are present and the contraction of the arterioles and venules with which they are often associated. They drain into the collecting lymphatics. Collecting lymphatics are the tubular and larger lymphatics. They have walls, smooth muscles in their walls. They exhibit peristaltic contraction that propels the lymph in forward direction. The lymph flow in larger lymphatics is further facilitated by the skeletal muscle contraction, negative intrathoracic pressure during inspiration, suction effect created by higher velocity of flow in veins into which the lymphatic drains. And unidirectional flow of the lymph is maintained by presence of walls in the larger lymphatic ducts. Substances that increase the lymph flow are called as lymphagogues. Usually, agents that increase capillary permeability also act as lymphagogues. The lymph is formed in the tissue fluid. Therefore, essentially, it is modified tissue fluid. It is formed by transcapillary exchange and exchange between tissue fluid and lymphatic ducts. Lymph flow is much slower in thoracic duct. That is 1 ml per minute than the blood. It is colloidal osmotic pressure. Its colloidal osmotic pressure is less than that of plasma. Presence of more lipids give milky color to the lymph, and hence it is called as chyle. So this is the constituent of the lymph. The proteins around 2 to 6 grams, uh, and the lipids intestinal lacteals contain more lipid. Carbohydrate content is less than the plasma. And the clotting factors contains clotting factors. They mainly contains many clotting factors because it is going to drain from the liver. And cells mainly they have lymphocytes and few monocytes, where they're rich in sodium, potassium, calcium, chloride, sulfates, and phosphate. And it is mainly made up of water. Coming to functions of lymphatic circulation, extra amount of fluid left in the tissue space by capillary filtration is taken up by the lymphatics and returned to the circulation. Thus, lymphatics prevent accumulation of excess free fluid in the interstitial space. That they prevent formation of the edema, and at the same time contribute to water content of plasma to some extent. In liver and intestine, a significant quantity of protein enters into interstitial space. This protein is returned to the circulation via lymphatics. This accounts for 25 to 50% of the circulating protein in the blood. Thus, lymphatics maintain protein content of plasma. Long chain fatty acids, cholesterol, and fat soluble vitamins absorbed from intestine and are transported to circulation via lymphatics. Mononuclear phagocytes in lymph nodes remove bacteria and pathogenic organisms from lymph draining from the organ. Thus, they play a protective function. This is in brief about the lymphatics. Thank you.